the average Tuesday for most of my officers is something that would put a lot of people in therapy for decades. We ask them to do things so that we can ignore them and pretend that they don't exist. It's a high trust culture, but it is hard to break into that. And so for when I started this, I told my wife, I'm like, so I'm going to ride twice every 2 weeks, which might mean once a week, or it might mean like twice in 1 week. And I'm going to do this for 6 months. And when I show up, I mean, it was the, hey, and one of the chaplains is here. So, and it was always, if I didn't know anyone there, it was always going to be the youngest, like the newest officer. It's like, and you'll be riding with insert highest badge number. It's like, I obey and I'll buy dinner, right? That was the thing. And
buying their love.
I mean, listen, food manipulation is a thing. And so, and I remember later, one of my officers, who's still there, was writing, was like, we just were wondering why he kept showing up. And we're like, is he like a spy from admin? Like, what is the deal here? And it was like, but you just kept showing up. And, and it's been great. Like, I loved volunteering, and started the conversation of like, hey, I'd like to work here, right? Which is a weird thing to say to someone. And so I was talking to one of the captains, and he's like, that sounds great. We don't have the money to do it. And so started looking into trying to grant write and fundraise and do the process of starting a not-for-profit, which is FLEC and that sort of thing. I'm not even on the board. My board's meeting tomorrow. I think I'm invited to the meeting. And got that going and started the fundraising process, trying to fundraise my way in. And then through some other things was able to had some help with some people who were just really familiar with local government. We got it figured out so that I am now a contract employee currently. So I don't work for the city, but I'm a contractor.
It is not very often that governments, like people end up working their way into a job, like a new position.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% aware now that I work for local government. And it's been really good. Yeah. And it has been, I mean, I do all sorts, like one of the things I've been working on recently has just been it's a weird project, but it's the one that because it just speaks to a basic need, which is I started this, it's called Patches. It's themed out in agency Patches, and it's like got coffee and like snacks, like it's everything from like your garbage M&M middle of the night snacks to like Cliff bars and Epic bars and like fruit.
So will keep you alive.
Yeah, and because we talk joking about food manipulation, but food is a way that you tell people you love them. And the thing I love about this thing is that local churches and businesses largely sponsor it, and then I've got this Amazon wish list, and people can go and buy, and it ships to the station.
Yeah.
And the thing that I love about that is that my officers get to see that, like, oh, it's not just like our chaplains that care about us, but it's like people in the community love us, because what they see is the same thing that a lot of us see, which is a national conversation.
Yeah. And
in that, I think there's a difference between your national conversation and your local conversation. I think the national conversation impacts the local conversation.
Yeah.
But you have to ask, like, excuse me, sorry, a lot of coffee. But being able to have, because, again, black guy, which is a thing that shows up that people ask me. I was recently on a panel like, so what's it like being black with cops? And it's like, mostly fine. I mean, it's the same as being black anywhere else. I get called an Uncle Tom a lot by black people every once in a while. Well, not a lot.
Specifically for the cop thing?
Oh, yeah, because I'm a chaplain. I mean, there's other reasons I also get called an Uncle Tom. But, again, I'll let your viewers Google that if they don't know what that is. It's suitable for work, I think.
Most of them might have to Google that.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go out there on a limb and say.
Uncle Tom's Cabin is the book if you want to read it. And so, so that's what I do. And
it isn't, I think it's a fair question, with everything going on. So, a direction I would love to go with this really is, in the last few years, abolish the police, man. Like get rid of that. Yeah, right.
Has that been a thing?
You haven't heard of that, I know, but yeah, because you're not addicted to social media, and you don't read the news cycles, and but no, really, I mean,
no, the summer after George Floyd was the only time I've unfriended people or blocked people on Facebook. like in mass. And that was a big move for me and it wasn't because
But you were already actively doing that work too, though, right?
I was.
With the police.
Yeah, and I was actively been black my entire life. And
Actively, not passively.
it's a thing that if you ask any black person, it's basically always been an active thing. And so,
Gotcha.
And when I say that, what's important is like these are people that sometimes I'd see at church or whatever, and the things that they were saying about like black people or people who thought that like, hey, maybe we should ask some questions about some of these things that are happening nationally. Like, why does 13% of the national population in some states, Louisiana, make up like not just a little bit of the majority, but like a vast majority of the prison population, and these sorts of things, right? And it is a difficult and nuanced conversation when we see videos online or whatever. Like Memphis is like a thing that was terrible. Like there's no way to that was, and every cop that I know, like I follow on TikTok or wherever, because I follow like a lot of like Audit the Police and also a lot of like Cop Talk, that sort of situation.
They agree that it was terrible.
Everyone's like, oh, this is egregious.
Right.
It's like one of the few times I've seen him like, nope, we're on the same page here. I've never seen the director like of the FBI when body cam footage was released be like, I can't remember what word he goes. I just can't think of another word.
Yeah.
So there's that, but like seeing these shootings and talking about like that's a whole conversation, right? But people talking about either my officers who I love, and I don't use like the L word that often. That feelings are like a thing, right? But I genuinely love them, and I spend time with them, and I don't just work with them. Like sometimes I go and hang out with them. I hang out with them a lot. Like I do their weddings.
You go to their weddings, do their weddings. Yeah,
I do their weddings. I mean, my wife and I have had. I mean, we've been in small group with some of my officers. Like joint small groups have been in, or like my wife and I went and hung out. We went to Indy with one of my officers and his wife a few weeks ago, and just because we are genuinely friends and neighbors and these sorts of things, and so these are people I love and I know, and what I get to do is have the weird conversations, right? Like I've had officers say like, so why does everyone think cops? Why do people think cops are racist? Because you got to remember that if you hate someone so much you refuse to talk to them and only yell at them, they never hear a different story.
Sure.
And so being like, oh, so let me like share with you what that looks like and why, and like how I am like how do I live in both of those worlds,
right?
And
do you think there was like a mutual empathy there?
Oh,
I mean, because you could 100% probably feel like, man, why does everybody hate us? Like from their point, from a cop's point of view, but then also, hopefully they would have kind of that similar like, oh, we can understand why there's a tension here.
Yeah, I mean, well, but the thing is like you have to hear this. I mean, so like not too long ago, I did diversity training, so it's like let me tell you all my terrible stories about like my like the terrible interactions I had with cops, and afterwards, and what that created was now a bunch of people who oftentimes have never heard those stories from someone that's like either trustworthy or not also saying I hate you, be able to ask questions, and having officers later come to me and say, hey, like 3 months later, I remember the thing you said at training about this. And so I had this, this lady who was, a black lady, and she was real upset. Clearly nervous. And it was like a taillight thing. It was mostly just like informational and that sort of thing. And he goes, I remember you saying that like if it's not like a felony stop or it's not like it looks like this is hinky. It's like just to say like, hey, this is what's going to happen. And he goes, it was amazing. She calmed down. It's like because she wasn't from. And she goes, I'm sorry, I'm just not from here. And it's like, no, it's no worries. Just want to let you know your taillight's out. You're not getting a ticket. We just need to run your stuff. And as long as you don't have a warrant, we're gonna let you go, right? And he goes, that made that interaction so much better. But being able to talk about those things, because if you don't have someone to talk to those things about, you don't know what you need. I mean, it just so I get to have those conversations. And then on the other side, a lot of times with people who are like, all cops are evil and they're bad, they're terrible. It's like, that's not true. Let me tell you about the time I was, standing next to one of my, and this was when I was volunteering, and I was, encouraged to go to something on behalf of a place I was working, and during this it was like a rally, or we'll say rally. It was like, I think maybe even sponsored by the city. There was someone's like, defund the police, or it was ACAB or something like that. And I was standing next to this when this officer goes, yeah, I did CPR on her kid 6 months ago, and he didn't die because of that. It's
hard,
like,
man.
wow.
Yeah.
And then talking about like the trauma of the life, right? So what the academic research is starting to point out is that you cannot do this job for a year or more and be the same, because we forget what we ask.
Being a police officer.
Being a police officer. We forget what we ask.
Or a police chaplain.
I mean, I think I've reached the kind of crazy I'm going to be for.
Obviously joking, yeah.
But, I mean, with that, like, so I have been with officers when, there are just terrible things that you see or hear or smell or feel. Like, and when I say feel, I don't mean like in your heart, but there's that, but also just physically.
Yeah.
And, I think you told your brother to keep it PG, so I won't trauma dump on everyone here. But we ask an immense amount from our officers, our paramedics, and our firefighters. We ask them to do things so that we can ignore them and pretend that they don't exist. We ask them to be with, DCS caseworkers, who also we're asking a lot of and not giving any resources to, because they don't have chaplains. And I mean, maybe there's some questionable like mental health care insurance there based on some conversations I've had. Anyway, to like be there when kids are removed because it's like the best situation, which is never a good one. Or just, again, so many awful stories.
Yeah.
And what I get to do, again, I'm not a therapist, and all my officers know that, but I'm not their pastor, because I'm not a pastor I'm not a paid pastor for the city or something like that. That's not my role. Chaplaincy is agnostic by nature. I happen to have been a pastor, and a lot of the skills translate. So what that means is I get to compassionately listen and help direct towards resources. And when someone's like, I've got this thing and I keep dreaming about it, it's like, okay, so I've been through some specific training that will help reduce maybe that turning into PTSD, or recognizing like, okay, this is a thing. Have you thought about talking to somebody? Like, I do. I just don't know who to go to. I've got a list that I keep. I've got it right here. Let me text it to you. And, I think all these people take city's insurance, and you can do that here. And I've got people out of county too, right? And so, it's been great being able to direct people to a therapist, or like retreats, or various things that are helpful for them, like their wellness, and to talk to them about like why you need to take a walk after shift so that your cortisol doesn't build up and give you a heart attack at 45, which is the average age of a first heart attack for a law enforcement officer. By the way, in the background population, the average age of a first-time heart attack is 64, I believe. And so the first heart attack for a law enforcement officer, by the way, 40% of law enforcement officers will have a heart attack before the age of 65. Again, the background population number is not that high. The Sigma Tactical Institute they're doing a ton of really cutting edge work on long-term heart health in officers and first responders in general. And they're actually lobbying insurance companies and Medicare and Medicaid to make first responders a special class like you would like diabetics, because there are things that there are tests that if my officers got that are better indicators of whether or not they're going to have a heart attack than what they can get as a outwardly healthy 25-year-old. We have tons of stories of officers who are like ultra marathoners, who are doing Ironman and like Ironman competitions and these sorts of things, dropping dead of heart attacks in the gym. And when you start doing blood work that if they were 70, the clear indicators are there, and which is crazy. And this is because of the stress of the job. Yeah. And then on top of that, all of a sudden you went from a profession that generally is well respected in America to like one where, because, and this is not a few bad apples sort of situation, like because there are problematic issues sometimes in policing and in agencies. There are problematic agencies. And we're also not asking questions about like, how come private prisons get to like write legislation for state and federal legislatures to put in front of them? And this is not a thing that like I'm making up. You can like there are instances where I think it was Last Week Tonight did a bit, and like someone's like, "Did you write this, Senator?" Well, yes, I did. I think it was maybe Texas or Louisiana or something like that. It's like, I did. It's like, well, it's funny because here, like where it's clearly copy and pasted, you have the name of insert prison here or insert state here. So it's like, ooh,
Yeah.
But like those are questions because they are incentivized to put people in jail, and we should ask like, what are the things we actually care about when it comes to laws? And I mean, there's bigger conversations that are not just the tip of the spear, which are the people in the street who are basically working out the county prosecutors' priorities. Sorry, I got that weed and complicated. We talk about heart health and prosecutorial.
You're
stuff.
super passionate about it, and I love it. And I think what I love the most about it is it doesn't. The things I've learned, and I think coming out of a ministry job, where it's like you come out of Bible college and you want to talk about just the Bible with everyone, and you want to really push like what and your education and things, and you don't think about it like that, but it's like, hey, this is what I was trained to do, and I think we should have a whole nother conversation probably about Christian education, and maybe I would love to talk to you about that. Having gone to Taylor University, and me having gone to a Bible college as well for undergrad, like I just think there's so much there. I mean, but no, what I really love about what you're doing with the chaplaincy stuff is you don't describe it as ministry, but it is very practically ministry. Like it is very much like if you were to describe what a deacon does at the average church who has deacons, it's like the same stuff. Like it's caring for people. It is taking people food in the middle of the night. It is showing up at somebody's doorstep when they've lost a loved one. It's really wrapping your arms around not just people in the community, but also the people that are protecting the people in the community, which I don't think a lot of people really have a heart for. I think a lot of people talk about Jesus loving people, orphans and widows and those who are in prison, which we don't even do those things well. Jesus said to do a few things, and like that, it's like those, and we don't even do them very well. But we kind of ignore, you can be tempted to say, well, you need to go minister in the prisons, but like, what about the people who run the prisons? Yeah. Right? And so I just think I really like it because it is so practical, and a lot of times caring for people, loving people well, from, the Imago Dei, as you talked about in the beginning, is like, that's everybody.
It is everybody. And I mean, just one last word on chaplaincy. If someone wants like a really great podcast that is specifically about this,
it's not this.
No, it's called Hey Chaplain, and I think it's like episode 54. Just listen to it.
Hey Chaplain.
Yeah, and it talks about what's called tactical chaplaincy, which is the difference between a community chaplain, which exists almost entirely for the community, versus someone. And this is like my view of chaplaincy, right? Of like, I just try to do as much as possible with my officers, and because to me, like, it's like a 85-15 or 80-20. I do like a lot of community stuff, like connecting churches with like, here's how you can help take care of the homeless, or hey, these are people who need resources, and like that kind of like I do a ton of that, but in my mind, most of my work is directed at keeping my officers healthy, well, and getting them to retirement well, so that they get more than the average of 18 pension payments that are paid out to retired officers. Yeah. Pension payments, by the way, nationally come out at once a month, because the last one comes out before you die, and the average is 18. So if we're going to talk about practically loving and taking care of officers, right, it's like anyone else. It's kindness. Like, that is it. If I'll just say this, if you get pulled over, if you are having an interaction with the police, right, one, you are a citizen, you have rights, absolutely. The time to legislate that is never on the street. That is what the courts exist for.
You don't often win that fight.
No. Yeah. And I don't think that we have a ton of those issues. I mean, I know we don't, because I'm around, and we didn't even talk about CLIA certification, which is like why we spend a lot of money to make sure that we don't have those issues. But what I would say is kindness matters, and just people are people, right? So whatever it is.
It's tough, man. I freak out when I see cops.
Oh, yeah. No.
Start hiding drugs I don't even have, like that I've never even done.
Yeah, no, because it's
like, what in the world?
What's the difference between a cop and a firefighter? Everybody loves it when a fire truck shows
Firefighters
up.
can't take you to jail, bro.
No, I mean, well, fire marshals can.
Been there, I know.
No, but no, everyone's happy when a fire truck shows up,
Sure.
right? Like, rarely is everybody happy when a cop car shows up. And so
just basic kindness, just
if you know one,
respect.
yeah.
I mean,
also, actually, this is, you know what? Oh, that's great. Here's the thing.
let's go.
In a conversation,
Tell us the real answer.
never ask this question. What's the worst thing you've ever seen? One, they're not going to know because they will literally only remember the past 2 weeks because of sleep and also just like the number of terrible things. Also, you don't want that actual answer. When people ask me that question as a chaplain, I'm like, what's the worst thing you've seen? I can't tell you because I'm pretty sure you would get taken down for that. Like, it's that bad. And like, do you want my trauma? No, you don't.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
do not play voyeur with my life.
Yeah.
And so, and I only do this occasionally.
Yeah.
So the average person, depending on the study that you're looking at, will have somewhere between what we call 3 and 5 critical incidents. That's fighting for your life, finding a dead body, or something of that nature, like fighting to survive.
Yeah.
The average 20-year law enforcement officer, depending on location and a couple other things, studies are putting it somewhere between 2 and 800.
God.
So the average Tuesday for most of my officers is something that would put a lot of people in therapy for decades.
Yeah.
Like, it's the thing that you would talk to with a therapist for like years.
You just have no idea what people are carrying around.